Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Gooey's Dungeon Dive, the podcast where I, Gooey, chronologically rank every dungeon in the Zelda series. We're on to the penultimate dungeon of the Adventure of Link, and we are at the Three-Eye Rock Palace, also known as the Hidden Palace. Similar to the Palace on the Sea, there seems to be naming discrepancies that have come about more recently, I think due to the Zelda Encyclopedia release. Hidden Palace makes a lot of sense, but Three-Eye Rock Palace sounds kind of cool and unique, so we're going with it. Why not? Both potential names of the palace refer to the way you find it or enter it. It's another, I think, kind of cool, memorable entrance. A villager you can talk to tells you to play, or what does he say? He says something like, call for help or call forth for help at the Three-Eye Rock. And, you see these three rocks that, stick out like a sore thumb in the middle of a desert on the map. And that's the place. That's the place you gotta call or whatever you have to do. And you go there. You play the flute, and what was a hidden palace becomes revealed, and that's how you enter it. And it's pretty cool. There's a whole journey you go on to get there, but it's a little less. This is the meat of, the palace reveal. While you're in town, too, it also would greatly benefit, instead of getting a ability or spell to specifically help you in this dungeon, you really ought to grab the magic key. Otherwise, this will be a bigger problem. The magic key is similar to the one in Legend of Zelda, where it opens all locked doors. This is really the only palace you need it in this game, but it's you need it for sure. So this is our second to last dungeon, and it is another good step up to me. It's another great mark on the road of progression that we've been experiencing. This palace is probably not as large as the Palace on the Sea, but it brings back that concept of the falling down from different levels and landing on the level below you from Maze Island Palace. But it also kind of combines it with the false wall idea from Palace on the Sea, in that it gives you false floors that you have to fall in one area. There's one area where you have to fall down where it's just open, another where it's a false floor. And you actually, I think, really don't want to fall in. You want to avoid it. So you have to eventually there's like statues in the room. You have to kind of calculate, okay, I have to jump here. And it might take a little bit of trial and error, especially if you're not expecting it the first time. But, I mentioned this from Maze Island Palace. I loved this concept, and I love that it's expanded upon here. I especially love the one spot you have to do it where, you fall from a higher floor and you come to the screen. And before you fall to the next floor, because there's another hole, the only way to land or continue on is to use the fairy spell, because you stop and you start floating in the air as a fairy, and you have to fly through this little tunnel almost on the side of the screen. And I think that is super cool. In general, I found myself using all the spells in this dungeon for the most part, but that also it did lead to a problem where sometimes I had no magic, but I really needed a spell, especially this fairy thing, or there's some rooms you need to use jump in. And so I just had to kill myself so I could get my magic back, because I wasn't going to go looking for it. It's going to take way too long. It's a much quicker option to just die. And if you do, the backtracking is a little annoying, but there's other ways to mitigate it. And it's kind of a small factor, because I really love that I was using jump, I was using the fairy spell. I was using all of them, honestly. I wasn't using the spell, but there's one particularly awful room in this dungeon, and it builds off of the thing I mentioned many episodes ago with the whole lava pit rooms. There's just one really bad lava pit room with those heads flying at you and enemies on the walkways, and it's just very you can't ferry past it, and it is kind of a piece of BS difficulty, but it wouldn't be so bad if the game at least respawns you at the dungeon, like we've mentioned before, because, or, you know, even in the room, I don't know, because I eventually, you know, combining some spells, using jump in particular, I eventually overcame the room, and it was kind of satisfying. So it wasn't a total net negative, but I was kind of frustrated banging my head against the wall for, you know, 2 or 3 times through the room. But it was worth mentioning because it was a notable point in my run of the dungeon. There's not exactly new enemies in this dungeon. This kind of does have some. It feels like this is like your final test, sort of a greatest hits before you go to the last dungeon, which I'm trying not to like jump ahead in these and like spoil things. I'm kind of taking it as you would be playing it for the first time, or at least, you know, thematically what you see. But, you know, it's like a final, like, here's everyone before you go to the last dungeon, and there's a bunch of new enemies and stuff there, and the theming's really strong. Nothing new in terms of the regular enemies, but what I did like is I think this is our first dungeon with a mini-boss, because we see the return of Rebenak, the blue iron knuckle, twice, actually, in this, and I think that's super cool, because he was a very memorable boss in this, so it was a welcome to me. It felt like, yeah, it just felt cool, like, you know, that boss you fought, well, here he is coming to get you, coming back for revenge. One of the times you beat him, I think it leads to the dungeon item, I guess, which is the cross, which is, again, it's in line with the rest of the game in that you really don't use it till later. It's actually not fully required, but it's for anyone playing it who's not good, or it's your like first time, like it's actually required, basically. And then lastly, we have the boss Barba, which is like a big dragon with a long neck that comes out of this lava. And you know, last time I played this game, I actually was kind of down on this boss, but this time around, I really like it, actually. I think it's like kind of a standout boss in this. I think part of it is to do with the lead up and actual like the navigation of the dungeon kind of builds up to getting to this boss, but also the room is memorable, you know, like in all the other rooms they've looked the same, but this one you have these lava pits that the boss is coming out of, and it feels very epic, actually, and it's actually kind of a fun fight. We love fighting, you know, dragons in Zelda, I guess, don't we? But yeah, to me, this actually did stick out as a very cool, memorable, distinct boss compared to the other ones who are mostly guys with some type of like sword, or I guess we had a mace in the last one, other than our wizard boss, our Wizrobe boss. But yeah, very cool, a very high point. I loved this boss, actually. I loved this dungeon. I loved the floor puzzle, and, you know, using the fairy spell was awesome. The fairy spell is just unique in general. So when we take a look at this ranking, it's one I'm going to put above all the other ones. I think each dungeon has been actually more interesting, distinct than the last, and I even, like, I want to put this one actually in the top 5, at least for now. It's going to get bumped out, even, I don't know, if Great Palace does its job, it'll bump this one out. But just as I'm going to actually put it above the Manji, just to show, like, that I actually loved the, some of these features here in the dungeon. So yeah, look at that. We finally did it. We broke the top 5. For me, that's a feat in itself. Shout out to 3 Rock Palace. So now we're going to be coming up on the season finale of Adventure of Link next week. We're definitely going to do another special episode, I think. So stick around for that. And yeah, thanks for everyone who's been following along. Give the video a like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. You know, share this with your Zelda friends, and maybe share some of your rankings as we're going. Anything to get the word out would be nice. And yeah, thank you so much for watching.